Vasudevaya.
Janmadyasya yato niviyad itaratas chate swavigyaswarat.
Janmadyasya yatam vayalitaratas chate swavigyaswarat.
Tene brahma hirdaya adhikavaye muyanti yat surayaha.
Tene brahma hridaya adhikavaye mujanti jasuraya.
Tejo varimadam yata vinimayo yatra trisargomisha.
Tejo varimrita jata vinimayo jatra trisargumrisya.
Damna svena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi.
Dhamna svena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destructions of the manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations in the material world.
Which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma pujita kaitravotra.
Dharma pujita kaitavotra.
Paramo nirmatsaranam satam.
Paramo nirmatsaranam satam.
Vedyam vastavam atra vastu.
Vedyam vastavam astra vastu.
Shivadam tapa trayon mulanam.
Shivadam tapo trayamanam.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Kim va parir ishvaraha.
Kim va parir ishvaraha.
Sadyo hridi avarudyate tra.
Sadyo rudya avarudyate tra.
Kriti bihi sususubhistakshanat.
Kriti bihi sususubhistakshanat.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth.
This Bhagavad Puran propounds the highest truth.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, their reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity,
this beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in maturity,
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
Is sufficient in itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
As soon as one attentively, submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
By this culture of knowledge.
By this culture of knowledge.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam.
Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam.
Sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam.
Sukhamukad amrita dravya sangitam.
Pibatar bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Pibatar bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Muhur ahoraska bhuvi bhavukaha.
Muhur ahorasika bhuvi bhavukaha.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
The mature fruit of the desired true Vedic literatures.
The mature fruit of the desired true Vedic literature.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all.
Although its nectarian juice was already reachable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna.
Shrivatam Swakata Krishna.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Hiryantakstohi Badrani.
Yadyanta Suhya Badrani.
Vidunati Sritsatam.
Vidunati Sritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures.
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic literature.
Or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita.
Or to hear from it directly through the Bhagavad Gita.
Is itself righteous activity.
It's self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna.
And for one who hears about Krishna.
Lord Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart.
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's heart.
Becomes the best wishing friend.
Becomes the best.
Or acts as a best wishing friend.
Acts as the best wishing friend.
And purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
And purifies the devotee who is constantly engaged in hearing of him.
Nasta presu bhadresu.
Nasta praishva bhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttamasloke.
Bhagavati Uttamasloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki.
Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops his transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam.
And from the devotees.
And from the devotees.
He becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
He becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava.
Tadarajastamo bhava.
Kamalobhadayaschaye.
Kamalobhadayaschaye.
Cheta etar anavitam.
Cheta etar anavitam.
Stitam sattve prasidati.
Stitam sarve prasidati.
By development of devotional service.
By development of devotional service.
One becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance.
One becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance.
And thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
And thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasanna manaso.
Evam prasanna manaso.
Bhagavat bhakti yogataha.
Bhagavat bhakti yogataha.
Bhagavat tattva vijnanam.
Bhagavat tattva vijnanam.
Mukta sangasya jayate.
Mukta sangasya jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away.
When these impurities are wiped away.
The candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness.
The candidate remains steady in position of pure goodness.
Becomes enlivened by devotional service.
Becomes enlivened by devotional service.
And understands the science of God perfectly.
And understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis.
Vidyate hridaya grantis.
Chidyante sarva samsaya.
Chidyante sarva samsaya.
Chidyante chasya karmani.
Chidyante sacha karmani.
Drutta evatmanishvare.
Drutta evatmanishvare.
Thus bhakti yoga severs the heart not of material affection.
Thus the bhakti yoga severs the heart not of material affection.
And enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram.
And enables us to come one stage of samsayam samagram.
Understanding of the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead.
Understanding the supreme absolute true personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from devotees in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Can one understand the science of Krishna?
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 19, verse number 15. Tamopayatam pratiyantu vipra.
Tamopayantam pratiyantu vipra.
Ganga cha devi dritachitam ise.
Ganga cha devi dritachitam ise.
Dvijo pasrista kuhakas takaso taksakova.
Dvijo pasrista kuhakas takyakova.
Dasat Valam Gayata Vishnugataha.
Tashat Valam Gayata Vishnugata.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. O Brahmanas, just accept me as a completely surrendered soul. And let Mother Ganges, the representative of the Lord, also accept me in that way. For I have already taken the lotus feet of the Lord into my heart. Let the snake bird, or whatever magical thing the Brahmana created, bite me at once. I only desire that you all continue singing the deeds of Lord Vishnu. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As soon as one is given up completely unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, he is not at all afraid of death. The atmosphere created by the presence of great devotees of the Lord on the bank of the Ganges and Maharaj Parikshit's complete acceptance of the Lord's lotus feet were sufficient guarantee to the king for going back to Godhead. He thus became absolutely free from all fear of death. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now this is good news for devotees, because normally most people are afraid of death. I don't say everybody. I can count myself one of those people who has natural fear of death, just like anybody else. However, we see that if we completely give ourselves or dedicate ourselves to the service of Krishna and have full faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we can not be afraid of death, because we know that the soul is eternal. It can never be killed. It can never be diminished. It can never be injured. And death is only changing a material body that's useless for an eternal body to go back to Godhead, or for another useless material body to again suffer birth, death, old age, and disease. But the point is, nahanyate hanyamane sarire, the spirit soul is eternal. It cannot be killed. It cannot be diminished. It is something that is beyond the modes of material nature. But due to confusion of the mind by material desires, one becomes convinced that I am this body, and everything in relationship with this body is mine. And as soon as that mixed up thought comes into the mind, one becomes entangled and conditioned by the material nature. However, if we understand that Krishna, there's no truth superior to Krishna. That is the beginning of spiritual understanding. This is explained in the 7th chapter, where it says, 7th chapter, 7th verse, no, 6th verse, Etad yonini putani sarvanitu padaraya aham krishnasya jagata prabhava palayastata. All created beings have their source in these two natures. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. So, Krishna is the beginning, the middle, and the end of everything. And then it says, Matak parataram nanyat kinchit asti dhananjaya maya sarvam idam protam sutre manigana ivan. O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, Dhananjaya, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. And again it says, Ishvara sarvabhutanam, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's no one equal to him or greater than him. Yeah, and there's a very nice verse also in the 11th chapter that says, okay. Yeah, well, it says, Tamaksharam paramam veditavyam, tam asya visvasya param nidanam, tvam avyaya sasvrata dharma gupta, sanatanas tvam purusho mato me. Krishna, you are the supreme primal objective. You are the ultimate resting place of all this universe. You are inexhaustible, and you are the oldest. You are the maintainer of the eternal religion, the personality of Godhead. This is my opinion. So that's Arjuna speaking. And therefore, if we understand just this, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there's no one equal to him, no one greater than him, we become a devotee. It's very simple. And without that understanding, we remain confused about what is the purpose of life, how to attain it, and what is our real purpose in this life. Just like we say, and Krishna says also, or Arjuna says also, Tvam Adideva Purusha Purana, Tvam Asya Viswasya Param Nidanam, Vetasi Vedyam Cha Param Cha Dharma, Tvaya Tatam Vishwam Ananta Rupa. You are the original personality of Godhead, the oldest, the ultimate sanctuary of this manifested cosmic world. You are the knower of everything, and you are all that is knowable. You are the supreme refuge above the material modes. O limitless form, this whole cosmic manifestation is pervaded by you. So you have 11th chapter, 18th verse. 11th chapter, 38th verse. And then you have the 7th chapter, 7th and 6th and 7th verse. So just understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's no one equal to him or greater than him. That is spiritual life. That is the understanding by which a devotee functions. Without that understanding, a devotee is confused. And the biggest confusion is death. Death is distressing to everyone. I don't know if you've ever seen people approaching their death. Well, materialistic people approaching death, it's the most distressing thing in the world for them. And people who are mixed, let's say atheists, a lot of atheists say, oh, I don't care, I'm not afraid of death because I know after death there's nothing. Well, that's fool's gold or fool's paradise that they're living in. Yeah, after death they're going to see Yamaraj. Yamaraj is not nothing. He's something to be afraid of, especially if a person's been sinful. But for a devotee is maintained by the mercy of Krishna throughout their whole life, protected by the Lord. Therefore, the devotee is not afraid even at the moment of death, because they know for sure that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They know for sure that the soul is eternal. And it doesn't matter what happens to them, because as it said, Tandera charanase bhakta sanivas, janami janami hoy e abhilas. The only desire of a devotee is birth after birth. At least he should take birth in the association of devotees. So this is the bedrock or the foundation on which the devotee functions in Krishna consciousness. And without this foundation, one remains wavering and going back and forth in spiritual life. Because of doubts, one develops duality. It's a psychological principle. If we have a doubt about the eternality of the soul, about Krishna being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we get attacked by duality. Should I do this or should I do that? And then oftentimes, just like Arjuna was overwhelmed with duality before hearing Bhagavad Gita, so he couldn't decide what to do, and he's confused. So once there's a doubt in our mind, we get confused, we become attacked by duality. And duality is the thing that keeps us in the material world. We're not sure, should I do this or should I do that? Just like yesterday, I was talking to a very, very nice devotee, and he's helped this temple a lot. And while we were talking, I referred him to what we heard yesterday about in the introduction of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I made I summarized it. I said, look, when Ramananda Roy was asked by Lord Chaitanya, what's the best way to be Krishna conscious, he first talked about Varnashrama, and Lord Chaitanya said that's superficial. It's not. It is simply help one come to the mode of goodness and make offerings to Lord Vishnu, but it's not enough. It's not the best way. So then he said, well, then everything you do, everything you offer, everything you eat, everything you give in charity, or everything should be done, or any austerities you perform, it should all be done for Krishna. He said, that's good, but that's not enough. It's not enough, because people could also do those things thinking that they'll get material benefit. So then he said, well, then one should become engaged in pure devotional service and become, an enlightened person. And Lord Chaitanya said, that's okay, but there are examples of people that acting like that, but actually they still maintain material attachments, material goals. And he said, okay, then people should just stay in whatever position they're in. It doesn't matter. They're rich, they're poor, they're intelligent, they're not intelligent. They might be in a good situation or a bad situation, but they should regularly hear the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita spoken by pure devotees and associate with pure devotees, or associate with genuine devotees. Lord Chaitanya said, yes. He said, that I can accept. So this constant hearing. So whereas it said here, it says, it is imperative, therefore, that one sincerely seek the association of pure devotees and hear them patiently and submissively from any position of life. The position of a person in the higher or lower status of life does not hamper one in the path of self-realization. The only thing one has to do is to hear from a self-realized soul with a routine program. The teacher may also deliver lectures from the Vedic literatures, following in the footsteps of the bygone acharyas who realized the absolute truth. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommended this simple method of self-realization, generally known as Bhagavata Dharma. Srimad Bhagavatam is the perfect guide for this purpose. So then I told my friend, I said, you only have 2 kids, and one of them is already, well situated, and the other one in a few years will be situated also. And you always be mother and father to these kids, but they're adults, and they're going to be separate from you. I said, so what are you going to do then? And I said, by that time probably you'll have a good pension. He said, oh yeah, I work for the government, so I'm going to have a great pension. I said, so then you should downsize. He said, you're right. I'm thinking about that more and more, downsizing. I said, you should downsize gradually, but to the point where you don't work anymore, and all you do is hear a regular routine, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, preach the same thing, and engage all the time in devotional service. He said, you're right. I said, yeah. I said, you're going to be alone with your wife, you won't have the responsibility of the kids, and you can diminish significantly your material needs, and therefore prepare yourself to do significant service to Prabhupada 24 hours a day, and at the moment of death, you go back to Godhead. He said, you're right. He said, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So we see that this regular hearing makes us very sober. But we don't have to stop doing everything we're doing now because we've accepted different responsibilities. We have to accomplish those responsibilities in a regular way. But then at one point life will change because one will not have those responsibilities. And therefore now the real responsibility is to be Krishna conscious 24 hours a day. So this is explained how to do this. Utsaha nischayat daryat tatat karma vartanat. Sangatyaga sato vrite sadvir bhaktir prasidyati. So this is a very important verse in the Nectar of Instruction, third verse, and it says that there are 6 principles favorable to the execution of devotional service. 1 being enthusiastic. 2 is endeavoring with confidence. 3 is being patient. 4, acting according to regulative principles, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, hearing, chanting, remembering Krishna. 5, abandoning the association of non-devotees. And 6, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure devotional service. So this is what we should be aiming for. And there's a very elaborate and wonderful purport where Prabhupada says, devotional service is not sentimental speculation. Just like we see sentimental speculation all over the place. Like, for example, I had this one friend who was not a devotee, but I was trying to preach to him, and one day he said, "Oh, you know, I'm very sad." I said, "Why is that?" When I got married, my wife, she was so nice to me, and I was very happy. I said, "Okay, well, you're still married." He said, "Yeah, but she's not so nice to me anymore." I said, "Well, what does that mean?" "Well, you know what it means." I said, "Well, I'm not quite sure, but I got an inkling of what you mean." I said, "But that's good. I mean, you have to eventually give up sense gratification." He said, no, it makes me very unhappy. This is what you would call lack of enthusiasm for spiritual life. He was not a devotee, but he was a very intelligent person, but he was stuck. He was in a rut. He fell into an abyss of self-pity. And what for? Sense gratification. So he was always living in the past and regretting the present. So that's not a life. That means that person cannot make any advancement in the culture of Krishna consciousness when they're like that. So, therefore, devotional service is not a matter of sentimental speculation or imaginative ecstasy. See, let's look at the way Prabhupada speaks. It's so poetic. Sentimental speculation or imaginative ecstasy. Its substance is practical activity. Yeah, so if we are practically engaged in devotional service every day, then all this sentimental speculation and imaginative ecstasy goes away. And our mind is engaged in positive activity of how to spread Krishna consciousness and how to stay Krishna conscious ourselves so that we can actually meaningfully speak to other people and influence them about Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, we're living in this abyss, a dark abyss of sentimentality and imagined ecstasies from the past. So, the real substance of devotional service is practical activity, time-sensitive devotional service. So then Rupa Goswami describes what is pure devotional service. Anya bilasita sunyam jnana karmadyanavritam anu kulyena krishnana silanam bhaktir uttama. So uttama bhakti, or pure devotional service, is free of let's say speculation and fruitive activity, and it's rendered favorably for the pleasure of the Lord. So this is a definition of pure devotional service. And one is devoid of all selfish desires. So then one is free from karma. Okay, so can we do this right away? Well, yes and no. If we're suffering a lot, like most people come to Krishna consciousness, I would say more than 90%, because they're in trouble. They're suffering. They're frustrated. They feel as if there's no possibility for them to be happy in this world, because everything they've done has been a failure. Okay, that's a legitimate reason. And in other words, there's a saying in English, I'm so far down I can only go up. In other words, I've hit the bottom, so from now on I can only go up. I can't go any further down. So, yeah, people like that will be willing to grab at straws, as they say. If a person is drowning, they'll even grab a straw to save themselves. Of course, they would like to have a log, but if they can't get a log, they'll even grab a straw. So they'll try anything to stop their misery. So, okay, that's understood. And therefore, they might be, when they get some relief by chanting and associating with devotees, taking prasadam, being regulated, then they can become very, very sincere about Krishna consciousness. But there's what's called, for normal people, the midlife crisis. Well, there is a midlife crisis for devotees also. They've been practicing Krishna consciousness for so many years, but little by little, they've been on the slippery slope of neglecting strict following and being negligent about strictly following all the rules and regulations, and all of a sudden they have a midlife crisis. Why am I doing this? Maybe I'd be happier if I did something else. And I'm getting sick and tired of just associating with devotees. And there's so many other nice people in this world, blah, blah, blah. So we see that Rupa Goswami says that the success is guaranteed for the strict practitioner. So the question is, do we want to successfully live this life? And success means that throughout our whole life we're Krishna conscious, and at the moment of death, our mind is completely fixed on Krishna, and we go back to Godhead. No more birth, death, old age, and disease, no more material body, no more taxes, no more fines, no more fear, no more anything. Anything, only transcendental bliss. So, therefore, Prabhupada says that bhakti is a type of is a type of cultivation, and then he says whenever there's cultivation, it means activity. So, this cultivation of spirituality, it's not sitting down idly and meditating like the Mayavadis do. It says practical activity. You know, the deities have to be worshipped. There's cooking, there's flower garlands, there's cleaning, there's chanting prayers of glorification of the Lord, like the Brahma Samhita. There's chanting Hare Krishna. There's so many activities that we have to do in a day, all based on Krishna consciousness. So we're not idly meditating. Just like sometimes, like 2 weeks ago, one lady called me up and said, "Oh, can I come to your temple. I said, oh, sure, you can come anytime you want. And, yeah, but I want to come when it's quiet so I can meditate. I said, okay, well, come, for the opening of the deities around 8:30 in the morning. He said, well, are there going to be any people there? I said, well, yeah, there's Krishna, there's Radharani, there's Jagannath. Who are they? I said, they're our deities. Oh, okay. Okay, I'll come. So she came, and as soon as she came, she sat down and, went like this and sat like a yogi and meditated, And there was no one here at that time, and she got what she wanted. She had some quiet moments of meditation, right? But what good is it? It's actually zero. It's no good at all. But, for her, it's feel good. Okay, fine. But at least she came to the temple. I offered her some prasadam. She didn't want it. So understand, what can you do with people who have been contaminated by Mayavad philosophy? There's very little you can do other than just be kind to them and hope that one day, they'll accept mercy. Okay, so this, what is this practical activity? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. The 9 types of devotional service. We should do them, one or all of them, or some of them, every day in our life. And but the first and foremost thing is Shravanam, is hearing. It's the first step, and it's the means and the end. The means and the end. Because if you hear, then you'll repeat. And if you repeat, then you'll remember Krishna always. And if you remember Krishna always, you're always Krishna conscious. And at the moment of death, you'll be able to remember Krishna and go back to Godhead. Go back to Godhead means always continue devotional service. It could be in the material world, it could be in the spiritual world. There's no difference for the devotee. So therefore, we must hear from bona fide authorities. Hearing is the number one thing that can change our desires. We can't get rid of desires, but we can change the quality of the desires. And by this regular hearing, the desire for sense gratification can be eliminated and replaced by the desire to please Krishna. So, we have some pleasure through sense gratification, but it's always accompanied by misery. But we also have transcendental pleasure serving Krishna that is not accompanied by misery. There's only happiness. Misery might be there because we're in the material world, but we're not affected by it because we continue the devotional service. That's the point. So, Prabhupada explains, Tatvidi Paripatena Paripastena Sevaya Upatekshami Te Jnanam Jnananas Tattvadarshanha. You must approach a bona fide spiritual master and masters and with a submissive attitude, ask significant questions, and offer service. And then there can be a genial or a congenial atmosphere for questions and answers. So that is the process by which we come to Krishna consciousness, stay in Krishna consciousness, and achieve the goal of Krishna consciousness, which is pure love of Krishna, by this regular hearing and chanting and discussion, and then becoming stronger in our conviction to follow strictly all the rules and regulations. So it's a very rare thing to meet genuine devotees, because there's not so many genuine devotees. And it's a very rare thing to, in the association of genuine devotees, to receive the seed of devotional service, or bhakti lata bija. And when we receive that seed, just like if you buy a seed, there's some instructions, how to start it. You wet it for a couple hours, then you put it in some clean soil, fertile soil, and you protect it in the beginning because it'll sprout, and the sprout is very delicate, and you have to protect it and keep watering it, and that way it can grow into a big plant, right? And have flowers and fruits and so many things. So the Bhakti Lata Bija is like that. Especially in the beginning, you have to protect it by avoiding the association of materialistic people. You might be working with materialistic people, but you avoid their association, meaning you don't, if they say, well, we're going to have a birthday party and we're going to roast a pig. That's our culture. Please come. Well, what do you say? Just like, for Cinco de Mayo, the Mexicans usually roast a pig, and they drink tequila and wine and different things. So the devotee would avoid such invitations because it's going to be very detrimental, especially if you see people having ecstasy by eating meat and drinking wine. You'll think, wow, look how much fun they're having. Maybe I should do it too. But no, it's not fun. It's all misery. But therefore, the devotee does not associate with materialistic people, even though a devotee may work with them as co-workers. But rather than eat a pig, the devotee sometimes will share a prasadam with them. Sometimes will speak affectionately with them about, what the purpose of life is and things like that. So there's a difference between when we say give up the association of non-devotees, it doesn't mean you can't work with people. It just means that you don't intimately engage in their type of pleasure, right? Or in their types of discussions, like they're talking about baseball, football, basketball, talking about the date that they had last night, or things like that. The devotee's not interested in those subjects. So this Chaitanya Charitamrita also, it says that the material world is a place of confinement for the living entities who are by nature anandamaya, pleasure-seeking. They actually want to be free from the confinement or the imprisonment of this world of conditional happiness. But not knowing the process of liberation, they are bound to transmigrate from one species of life to another and from one planet to another. In this way, the living entities are wandering throughout the material universe. When by good fortune one comes in contact with a pure devotee and hears from him patiently, one begins to follow the path of devotional service. So hear from him patiently. That means on a regular basis. And such an opportunity is offered to a person who is sincere. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness is giving such a chance to humanity at large. If by fortune one takes advantage of this opportunity to engage in devotional service, the path of liberation immediately opens. This is a great statement by Prabhupada, right? So this Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasada Paya Bhakti Lata Bija. If one is fortunate enough to meet genuine devotees and associate with them rather than associating with non-devotees, then they can receive the Bhakti Lata Bij, the seed of devotional service. And then they can cultivate that seed through practical activities in Krishna consciousness and see that seed grow into a wonderful plant. Eventually it'll pierce the covering of the material universe, enter into the spiritual world, go straight to the lotus feet of Krishna and offer flowers and fruits to the Lord. That's our destiny. That's what we're aiming for. And you see, it doesn't matter whether you stay in the material world or you go back to Godhead. Krishna is present everywhere in the material world also. Once we purify our senses, then we're able to see the Lord's presence. And we purify that by engaging the senses in devotional service. So therefore, in all phases of life, one has to perform devotional activities under the direction of the spiritual master or masters in order to attain perfection in bhakti yoga. It is not that one has to confine or narrow one's activities. Krishna is all-pervading. Therefore, nothing is independent of Krishna. As Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita 9:4, Mayatatamidam sarvam jagat avyaktamurtiyana matstani sarvabhutani nachaham te sovastita. This matstani sarvabhutani means everything depends on Krishna's energy. So everything is made of Krishna's energy, right? So that means Krishna is everywhere. Wherever you look, inside, outside, up, down, when you become trained, you'll see Krishna. You won't see Maya. So, therefore, whatever there is in this material world, if we learn to use it in the service of Krishna, that is real knowledge. That is real devotional service. So, and everything is Krishna's energy. So everything we see has a potential of being used in Krishna's service. Thus, the devotee can understand that since nothing is independent of Krishna's energy, everything should be dovetailed in a service. There's another quote that we should put into a poster, right? The devotee can understand that since nothing is independent of Krishna's energy, everything should be dovetailed in his service. So, this all depends on utsaha, enthusiastic energy and thought and conviction of the devotee. So whenever an endeavor is executed with intelligence in Krishna consciousness, it becomes enthusiasm. So this is the symptom of an advanced devotee. They're always enthusiastic. And they're enthusiastic, and they're always patient. And they're patient because they have complete faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore they're not worried whether they're successful or not successful. They continue their devotional service with enthusiasm, worshiping the deity, chanting their rounds, waking up early, bathing regularly, hearing. All these things they do with enthusiasm because their intelligence has become enlightened, and it knows, and they know that there's no other goal in life than Krishna. Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Krishna, you are everything for me. Samahatma Sudurlabha. Such a person is a rare Mahatma, a rare person who's very progressive and very, let's say, generous, sharing whatever they've learned about Krishna with all others. So the execution of devotional service is not a matter of idle meditation, but practical action in the foreground of spiritual life. And these activities must be executed with patience. One should not be impatient in Krishna consciousness. Indeed, Krishna consciousness movement was started single-handed, and in the beginning there was no response to Prabhupada speaking about himself. But because we, so he's saying we, so he wants to include us also in his endeavor, we continue to execute our devotional activities with patience. People gradually began to understand the importance of this movement, and now they are eagerly participating. One should not be impatient in discharging devotional service, but what should take instructions from the spiritual master and execute them with patience, depending on the mercy of Guru and Krishna. The successful execution of Krishna consciousness activities requires both patience and confidence. So first is enthusiasm, next is patience, and now is confidence. A newly married girl naturally expects offspring from her husband, but she cannot expect to have them immediately after marriage. Of course, as soon as she is married, she can attempt to get a child, but she must surrender to her husband, confident that her child will develop and be born in due time. Similarly, in the devotional service, surrender means that one has to become confident. Wow. Remember that. Surrender means that one has to become confident. The devotee thinks, Avasya Rakshibe Krishna. Krishna will surely protect me and give me help for the successful execution of devotional service. So this is where the confidence of the devotee comes from. And that's why they're willing to surrender to Krishna, because they're confident that Krishna is going to protect them. This is called confidence. When you're sure that Krishna is going to protect you, then you surrender. As already explained, one should not be idle, but should be very enthusiastic about executing the regulative principles, tatat karma pavartana. Neglect of the regulative principles will destroy devotional service. Neglect of the regulative principle will destroy devotional service. In this Krishna consciousness movement, there are 4 basic regulative principles: forbidding illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. A devotee must be very enthusiastic about following these principles. If he or she becomes slack in following any of them, his progress will certainly be checked. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore recommends tatat karma pavartana. One must strictly follow the regulative principles of Vaidhi Bhakti, or sadhana bhakti. In addition to these 4 prohibitions, which are called yamas, there are positive regulative principles, niyamas, such as daily chanting of 16 rounds on japamala beads. These regulative activities must be faithfully performed with enthusiasm. This is called tatat karma pavartana, or varied engagements in devotional service. This is all precious information. And we see how Prabhupada has given all the details for success in Krishna consciousness. And isn't that what everybody wants, to be successful? Well, here you have the formula for success. Right? So we'll continue with that tomorrow. Are there any questions? So this little book, Nectar of Instruction, is really extremely profound. And it's exactly nectar of instruction, how to become Krishna conscious. Okay, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So remember, enthusiasm, patience, confidence. And then there's some more after that.